Good morning and welcome to City Club Missoula's August Forum, Deciding America's Future, the Mayoral Candidate Debate. I'm Brett Rosenberg and I have the honor and privilege of serving as the City Club Missoula's Board of Directors. All of us behind the scenes at City Club Missoula had really hoped this forum would be our first in-person experience in a long time. Alas, it was not to be, but I'm delighted to see you all here virtually today. If you would like a refund for the in-person forum, you should receive an email pretty soon if you haven't received one already with instructions on how to get one. Otherwise, we are certainly grateful for your donation. City Club Missoula is here to bring people together to inform and inspire them on issues vital to the community through public forums that encourage the discussion of new ideas and the free exchange of thought. We have a deep commitment to civility and civil discourse, even when we discuss very controversial issues. Even though this is technically the internet, it's not that internet, so please be respectful of each other and our panelists, irrespective of whether you agree with them. Before I introduce our moderator today, some thank yous are in order. Thank you, as always, to the University of Montana and Alex Karklin, who keeps the Zoom train rolling on time and making these virtual forums happen. Also, thanks to the Missoula Community Access Television, which records our forums as part of their Media Assistance Grant Program for nonprofit organizations. MCAT serves our community on cable channels 189 and 190. You can also find videos of past CCM forums by clicking on the video button on our website, cityclubmissoula.com. Thanks to our sponsors, in particular those at the executive level. In addition to the university, they are Blackfoot Communication and First Security Bank. We also like to highlight some other sponsors every month. So today we want to recognize Garlington Loan and Robinson and Cedar Mountain Software. Thank you so much for your support. We're also grateful for our very diverse set of sponsors, and we invite you to join them today by going to our website, cityclubmissoula.com. And of course, thanks to our board of directors and our administrator, Eric Legbold, whose help with our forums and other things is invaluable. City Club Missoula would also like to acknowledge that we are in the Aboriginal territories of the Salish and Kalispel people, some of whom are present with us today at our forum. Today, we honor the path they have always shown us in caring for this place for the generations to come. Today's forum will be moderated by Tyler Christensen. Tyler is a longtime Missoula resident, taxpayer, and parent of 2 Missoula County public school students. She's a graduate of the University of Montana School of Journalism and first joined the Missoulian in 2005 as the business reporter and editor. For the past 14 years, she has helped guide community debate on important matters of public interest as Missoulian's opinion editor. Tyler will introduce our candidates. I will see you all at the break at around 12:15 once the candidates have given their introductory statements and responded to some opening questions. Then you'll have the opportunity to ask questions as well. Over to you, Tyler. Thanks so much, everybody.
Thank you, City Club, and welcome everyone to this virtual forum featuring Missoula's candidates for mayor in 2021. Here's our format for today. I will start by giving a brief introduction of our 4 candidates before they each talk a little more about themselves in further detail. Then I will ask a couple of questions to help frame the tone of the forum and allow the candidates to elaborate on some of their ideas. Each candidate will have up to 2 minutes to answer. Thanks to Robert Giblin again for acting as timer. After the segment, audience members will have the opportunity to ask questions via the Zoom Q&A function. City Club volunteers will forward to me the questions from the audience to ask the candidates. And for this part of the forum, each candidate will be given 1 minute to answer and 30 seconds for rebuttal. These questions may be for just one candidate in particular or not relevant to all candidates, so not all candidates will be expected to answer every question. I understand these time limits do not allow much opportunity for nuanced responses, so I encourage each of the candidates to make your time count, staying on point and being as specific as possible. This debate will be live streamed, recorded, and the video will be posted on the City Club website. Without further ado, here are our 4 candidates for mayor in alphabetical order. First up is Jacob Elder. He is a law student at the University of Montana. He has been named a Max Baucus Fellow and served as a legal intern at the Chief Counsel Office of the U.S. Department of Transportation. Jacob was born in Liberia and came to Helena as a refugee, attending high school at Helena Capital and then joining the Grizzly football team in 2011. He is a Marine Corps veteran, having spent 4 years with the Corps. This is his first run for public office. Next, we have our current mayor, John Engen. Born and raised in Missoula, John is a product of Missoula's public school system and a graduate of the University of Montana. He has worked as a journalist and editor, small business owner, and served 1 term on the Missoula City Council before being elected mayor for the first time in 2005. He's now served 4 terms as mayor and is running for a 5th. Next, we have Sean Knopp, who was born in Polson and raised in Missoula, where he graduated from Helena High School. He is a project manager at Montana Glass, where he has worked for the past 15 years handling budgeting, ordering, scheduling, and hiring. Sean has served in leadership positions on the board of directors at 2 nonprofits for a total of 20 years, and this is his first run for public office. Finally, we have Greg Strandberg, who is from Helena, where his family has been living since the 1880s. He moved to Missoula in 2001 to pursue his education. Then in 2008, he moved to China to help people in that country with theirs. He moved back to Missoula in 2013 and worked as a freelance writer of books and blogs. He now works at a downtown bar. This is the 6th time Greg has run for public office to represent the people of Missoula. Now, each of the candidates can take up to 5 minutes to talk a little bit more about yourselves and why you are running for mayor. Jacob, let's start with you.
Well, I first want to thank City Club Missoula for hosting this event, and I want to thank you, Tyler, for moderating this forum. My journey to get into the stage started many, many years ago in a small African country called Liberia. My twin and I were born in a civil war in Liberia. And at that moment, our father left the family with my mother, who was a single mother, and to take care of us, all 7 of us. Life was hell. Life was hell as a child. We were homeless. We traveled from refugee camp to refugee camp, trying to find a safe place to land. The things that we saw as children, no kid should ever see in their life. Often the scene of a dead body on the street, that was normal. But going days without a meal was also another normal reality that we lived through. My mother would take off early in the morning and go out to find us a meal. Often she wouldn't get back till 2 in the morning or 3 or who knows when, with a piece of bread for us to share amongst ourselves. Often we will boil hot water and throw salt in it and to drink that. And so that was sort of our meal there as well. But throughout our time, seeing people die around us, seeing diseases consume people's bodies, and all these terrible things, we remained strong and we kept pushing because our mother and the God that I serve was guiding us and protecting us. My life changed when I was adopted. My twin and I, when we were adopted while we lived in a displaced camp, we had a white missionary that went back to Liberia and to deliver aid. And we saw her handing out candies, and I ran up to her, grabbed her hand, and wouldn't let go. And she tried to wiggle her hand out of mine, and I just was so fascinated with her skin, and I thought it was fascinating. I'd never seen anyone that didn't look like me at that point. So she handed me a candy, and I grabbed the candy in one hand, and I held onto her other hand. Well, eventually she asked to see my mother, and so I took her to where we homesteaded. We homesteaded under a stairwell in a rundown soccer stadium. So we went over there, and she met my mother. My mother told her to take us. Now fast forward, we're sitting on the plane, and my mother's in the terminal looking out at the plane as the plane was ready to take off out of Liberia. I saw my mother crying, not knowing really what was going to happen, but she wanted a better future for us. In that moment, I knew my life would never be the same again. I was set out on a mission to serve people. I was set out on a mission to make a change. And I came to America. I moved to Helena, Montana. They took me in as their own. I fell in love with pizza. I fell in love with the weather and the community. And life was great. I came here and played football, and then went off in the Marines and served my country in the Marines. So in the Marines, there are several things that you learn very forcefully. But one of the things that I learned that has helped me become the leader I am, that was already in me, but the Marine Corps cultivated. They cultivated my leadership skills, where I strongly believe in accountability, strongly believe in transparency, and I strongly believe in courage. I believe that it's important that a leader have credibility, but also that that a leader is transparent. So as your next mayor, I will always be truthful and transparent with you. You can also believe that I understand my responsibilities and the responsibilities of others around me, and how we go about trying to adequately serve you. But we must be transparent at all times. My leadership style, it's pretty much low key. I like to think I'm a meat and potatoes kind of guy. Don't mean that dietary wise, but I'll be bloated. I'm more of a straightforward. I'm going to tell you what I think, and I'm not playing games with you. I tend to ask questions, but also I will gather the relevant data and then follow the facts to their logical conclusion, even if that conclusion turns out to be unpopular. So you could always expect me to be accountable, to be transparent, and to spend your money wisely. I think it's time for a new leader to step in and change the discourse of our city. It's time for a new paradigm in our city. And I'm the leader you can count on to lead us down a prosperous road.
Thank you, Jacob. Let's hear from John next.
Well, thank you, Tyler, and good morning. Thanks to City Club for hosting this forum. Again, it's yeoman's work, and I'm grateful for all that City Club does to inform the community and create an opportunity for questions and answers, and for all of us to try to address some of the key issues facing the residents we serve. I'm running for mayor in 2021 for the same reasons I ran in 2005. I believe in this community. I believe that we have opportunities here that are the envy of other communities around the state and the nation and the world. And I believe that we have a collective responsibility to preserve and maintain the quality of life that we have, and also grow the community in ways that make sense and make the community a better place for everyone. I have spent the last 16 years or so learning lots of lessons about the way this community works and the way that we work together. And along that journey, I've also realized that we have such an engaged community and such a thoughtful community that nothing happens in a vacuum, and that the mayor has to have thick skin while maintaining a remarkable degree of compassion. And I think what you've seen over the course of these 16 years is that I'm concerned with the details of the day-to-day operation of the city, the nuts and bolts, the A to Z of how we operate. And I'm also ready for any of the crises that come our way, the surprises, the things that no one expected, whether that's a crisis of rape culture at the University of Montana that results in a book that brings the community to its knees, or a pandemic many years later that also brings a community to its knees. At the end of these crises, we always end up standing because we're able to work together, we're able to be thoughtful, we're able to take risks, we're able to admit mistakes, and we're able to move forward. I'm proud of the work that I've been able to do with folks in our community, but that work's not over. I've been talking about housing for the last 16 years and have been making progress in the housing arena over the course of those 16 years. The housing challenges in Missoula aren't new, but they're exacerbated by a number of things. And fortunately, we're in a position because of some actions that we took years ago to set a course so that the crisis in housing wouldn't be worse for our community. And there's much potential for it to get better. We have the only housing office in the state. That housing office created a housing policy that was approved by the city of Missoula's council. We are funding support for housing through both an affordable housing trust fund and our redevelopment agency, which uses tax increment financing to serve the broader community. And I believe that we will continue to put a dent and actually solve many of the challenges around housing today, both for folks who are looking for homes that they can afford and for folks who are living on the street. Homelessness is a critical issue in this community, as it is in many others. The difference is that we're willing to take some steps and experiment and make some investment in ensuring that those most vulnerable among us have opportunities to live in safe, decent places. It's an imperfect process, but we are marching down a path that, again, I believe will make a difference. I believe in public safety and health, and I believe that we need to have a strong police department. I believe that the fire engines need to roll on time, and I believe that we need to make continued investment there. I also believe in the work around equity, and some of the noise I've been hearing suggests that if we pursue equity as a city, that there are winners and losers. And the fact of the matter is that I don't think that's the case. I think if we are engaged in equity work, it doesn't mean that someone has to be threatened or feel persecuted in any way. The opposite is true. And equity means many things to many people, but one of the things it means for me is a kid who's attending Franklin Grade School today, for example, who may be couch surfing, who likely doesn't have an adult in his or her life who's had a college education, who doesn't know what the opportunities are. We can lift that kid up. We can expose that kid to greater opportunities. And with that, I will close.
Thank you, John. Sean, it's your turn.
Thank you, City Club, for the opportunity to speak. I was hoping this was going to be live, as everybody else was, I'm sure. I am a local Missoula resident, born and raised in Western Montana. I did spend about 17 years away, moved back here in 2000. Been working at Montana Glass for the last 15 years. As Tyler said, I've been on the board of director for 20 years, eventually being president and vice president of those boards. There's a lot of things that need to be changed, I think, in this city or improved upon. The homeless issue, I think we're being very reactive, and I'd like to see us get more proactive. The deficit, I'd like to get that under check. We need to fund the police department more so that we can fight crime. Our crime rate has gone through the roof. We're almost double the national media. We need to stop the crime rate and get that under check. I think a lot of the other problems are stemming from that. So I'd like to make Missoula a safer place for our kids. I was a single father. I raised my two kids from the time they were 10 and 11 by myself. And I don't think I could do that today the way the crime rate is with the things that I had to do to get those kids to school and stuff. So as your next mayor, I would like to improve the crime rate, work on the homeless on a proactive scale. I'd like to start a task force to work with them to get to the root of each cause so that we can actually solve the problem, because I don't think there's one blanket solution that's going to cover that. Now I see Greg. Anyway, and that's my my spiel. I look forward to working with the citizens. We need to have transparency throughout, and I'd like to be the one that makes the changes and works for the people's, for all the people, not just a few. Thank you.
John. Finally, it's Greg's turn.
All right, my name is Greg Strandberg, and I want to thank the City Club for allowing me to be here today and for the other candidates for being here. The main reason that I'm running for mayor is I think we face a serious existential crisis here in Missoula, and it comes down to our housing crisis. And this is a crisis that is made and designed by the city by their failed policies right now. We should be building 300 housing units a year just to keep up with our regular supply and demand. But right now we are 1,200 units behind. And these are everything from apartments to single family homes, multifamily, whatever. We're not building these. I think we're building fewer than 100 housing units a year right now. And I just don't understand why this is happening. I don't understand why the city is just dragging its feet, not allowing new constructs to happen, even though there are plenty of places in the city to do that. One of the prime spots that we have right now is the old library building downtown, which is not being utilized at all. It's just sitting there. I think we need to get that thing torn down as quickly as possible and put up another Rome-style apartment building right next to it that's maybe 5 or 6 stories high. The old Rome, we built that in a year and a half for $32 million, and it houses almost 500 people. Now, if we can build another one of those in a year and a half, 2 years from now, it would make a serious dent in our current housing crisis. So that's just one area. Another area that I'm very concerned about is the city budget. Right now, we have city revenues of $190 million a year, but we have expenses of $204 million. So that means every year we have a budget deficit of about $14 million a year. Now, is that sustainable? And what can we look at in the budget that we could cut, pare down, things that are being duplicated to kind of get this under control? Another thing that we really need to consider is our long-term debt. Right now, the city is about $200 million in debt, and each year we pay about $14 million on interest on that debt. Now, to give you an idea of how big of a problem this is, our city police department has a budget of about $19 million. So in a few years, we're going to be paying more for our debt than we're paying for our police. And that's moving in exactly the wrong direction at a time right now when all over the country we see rising crime. Here in Missoula, we have a terrible problem with the homeless right now. The city's plan right now is to build 3 homeless tent camps. Last year they had 1. This year they want 3. I think next year it's going to be 6. I think we're totally moving in the wrong direction here in so many ways. We need to start having these dialogues, especially about where we want to start building housing. And that's one of the main reasons I'm running for mayor. Thanks.
Thank you, Greg. Before we take audience questions, I did have a couple of general questions to get us started. Both of them are on subjects that you've just brought up, Greg. So why don't you go ahead and start with answering this first one.
Okay.
And that would be the fact that in a recent community survey, as in past community surveys, the lack of affordable housing has been identified as a top concern. What are your plans to address this concern?
Well, first of all, I think that doing something with that library building location is key. I'm very worried that after the mayoral election is over, there's going to be a lot of talk about maybe making that affordable housing. But when the election's over, I think that'll probably be handed over to some developer from Florida so they can build a fancy new hotel and conference center, complete with a brand new art gallery beneath it, because we know we need a lot of those. Another great option that we're not considering a lot is the old Canyon River Village housing complex way outside of town, kind of on the border there between the city and the county. Anytime you drive to the airport, you can see it. It's about 250 houses, pretty closely packed together on 35 acres. That was put in the early 2000s, and it allowed about 500 Missoulians to get part of the American dream of home ownership at a very affordable price back then. We need to be building more of these places, and we need to identify areas in town. I don't care if that's a Facebook survey or however we want to do it. We need to start asking citizens, where are good locations in town that you wouldn't mind seeing a new duplex in a housing unit that's a few stories high? We need to start having these discussions in the community.
Thank you for your answer. Jacob, would you like to answer the question next?
Yeah, absolutely. So talking about the things that we must do to create more housing supply, it's really not enough. We need new leadership, immediate action, and measurable results. So I in terms of housing, I would work with the city planning staff, the city council, planning consultants, and members of the public to rewrite Missoula's Title 20 zoning code in a way that supports the construction of more housing of all types and at all price points, while also allowing for streamlined staff review and easy, predictable compliance for members of the building industry. I will also work with leadership in the city's development services office to immediately improve planning and permit review processes, eliminate redundant regulations, and cut the many red tapes we have here. I think it's past time we focus on zoning and subdivision regulations that truly seek to protect the public health and safety, but while also eliminating regulations that create really unnecessary workloads for city staff, and delay projects and frustrate the building community. They also pit neighbors against neighbors and drive up the cost of housing. So in addition, we will seek to align our infrastructure's goals with housing goals and focus our infrastructure investments in ways that support the creation of more housing. So TIF, tax increment financing, it can and should be play a bigger role in the creation of affordable housing than it historically has. It's not really working. So focusing on this tool then to the benefit of our entire community, rather than working as a corporate welfare for the wealthy few. Further, we must continue to proactively support and work with for-profits and nonprofits, affordable housing developers, invest in CDBG funds wisely, support our local low-income housing tax credit projects, applications that offer meaningful.
We're out of time for that question.
Thank you.
Thank you. It is John Engen's turn to answer the question about affordable housing now.
You'd think I'd understand mute and unmute by now. Thank you. So as I suggested before, we've been engaged in housing development for a very long time here at the City of Missoula, and under my watch, we've not only rewritten Title 20, but we're in the process now of rewriting that zoning code and moving toward a uniform zoning code that should actually streamline both our processes and our regulations. We have invested in staff to ensure that we can move that process forward and really modernize what we're doing. The City of Missoula doesn't build housing. The private sector builds housing and does so in partnership. A couple of things to note. One is that the City of Missoula has permitted more than 600 residential units so far this year. So we actually are moving along, but we're not moving along as quickly as we'd like to. In addition, our investment through TIF is really targeted and makes a ton of sense, particularly when we're doing land banking and redevelopment. So if you look at the Scott Street Partners project, which is what we intend to do with the old library block as well, we engaged in a public process. We found a private sector partner, and working with that partner and the community, we're tipping up what in that case will be the largest affordable housing project in the state of Montana, not only including rental units, but also units for ownership. And that's a model that we can replicate not only at the library block, but at Johnson Street and at other community facilities, including what we think is great opportunity for redevelopment along the West Broadway corridor.
Thank you for your answer, John. And finally, Sean, I believe it's your turn.
Thank you. The biggest problem that I'm finding, because I'm in the construction business and I work with contractors on a daily basis, and the biggest frustration that they're having is the wait time for a permit to build anything. I've got a contractor I'm working with now that's been waiting for 8 months for a permit to start a project. We have to streamline that process, and we have to get them moving faster. 8 months to start a project is ridiculous. We need to remove some of the regulatory barriers, but keep the safety in check. At the federal and state levels, homes and apartments to be built and reduce time of cost of building. Innovation to build faster, increase productive and lower costs by doing prefabs. We can increase the amount of homes that we can build, but we can't do anything until we can get a permit to build them. I even see frustration in the actual permit department when I go in for permits, and I talk to some of those people. I think the whole process needs to be streamlined. We need to work with private sector, lenders, nonprofit organizations, and get funding, creative funding for building some of these affordable housing projects. We just need more housing now. The lack of housing is driving the prices up as far as $100,000 of national media or state median just in 1 year. So that's my short answer.
For your answer, Sean. Moving on to the next question. It has to do with one of the mayor's main duties, which is overseeing the city budgeting process and proposing an annual city budget. What changes, if any, would you propose for the fiscal year following the election? And John, I believe it's your turn to answer first.
Thank you, Tyler. It's difficult to count chickens before they're hatched. So what we do and what I would intend to continue to do in my next term is engage in the delicate balancing act that is funding the operations of the city of Missoula. And it is a balancing act, and it's a challenging one, and it often brings lots of opinions to the table, and I'm grateful for those. But the fact of the matter is that I am asked relentlessly for more, not less service. I'm asked for those services to happen in critical areas that are operationally expensive, but I also think essential. And we live in an environment where we have an antiquated tax system in the state of Montana. And a reliance on property taxes that's fundamentally unfair. And what I try to do is make that as fair as possible. So what you would see from me, as much as you see this year, is investment in the basics, making sure that the values of the community with regard to public safety, with regard to recreation, with regard to transportation are all appropriately funded. And we do our best to make incremental change moving forward. You would also see me continuing to reel at the legislature and rally for some opportunities for new revenue to come to not only Missoula, but all of the municipalities in the state that struggle with the same issues. You would expect to see me be thoughtful, a good steward of public resources, and as bold as the times require.
Thank you for your answer, John. Sean, it's your turn.
Thank you. Yes, I ditto John Engen's answer to that. It's a fine line to balance a budget and give all the services that are needed. I would certainly concentrate on the essentials first, funding the police, the fire department. I talk to the police department on a daily basis in front of my office, and they feel that they don't have the resources that they need to do their job. So first and foremost, I'd like to see them get the resources that they feel they need. But just balancing the budget and try to reduce the overall debt, so that we're not paying so much in interest on that, so we have more money for other services. We do have an antiquated tax system that needs to be changed, so I would want to work on the state level for that, trying to get some changes done. That's it.
Thank you, Sean. Greg, you're up next.
Okay, well, when it comes to the budget, we got serious problems because, as I said, we're already dealing with the $14 million deficit in last year's budget, and it seems every year this kind of happens. But you have a very fine line when it comes to the budget because about 77% of it is made up of personnel costs, which means your city workers. So that leaves you with only about 23 or 25% of other spending to deal with if you want to get this under control. So that becomes very difficult. Now, one of the things I don't really agree with was last year during the height of this pandemic, when most businesses were laying off workers left and right, our city hired an additional 20 full-time workers. I don't think that was necessary, and I think it sends the wrong message, especially when we already have almost 700 city workers. And that's why when I see things in the budget like $3.6 million in purchase services or $3.3 million on grants and contributions, or my favorite, $5.6 million on other, whatever that might be, why can't we pare these down? Why can't we get some of our existing city workers to do some of these things that we're paying out of firm things, businesses to do, when we have city workers that are more than capable of doing them? I think if we cut a few $100,000 here, there, it adds up. We can start chipping away at that budget deficit. Another huge problem we have is our urban renewal districts. We have 6 of them in the budget this year, and they bring in 25 million, but they spend 31 million. So again, we have a budget deficit right there of 6 million. We're just going in the wrong direction here, folks.
Thank you for your answer, Greg. It's Jacob's turn.
Well, first, I think it's worth noting that, look, when the mayor took office in 2006, the city owed $49 million. At this point, we owed $217 million. Now, that's a failed government, in my opinion. As part of being a leader, is being able to say no sometimes when it is for the greater good of the community, but also people are hurting, and we need to prioritize needs over some of the things we want. Now, in terms of the budget, I will start out by looking at the entire budget instead of only a new addition to get a clearer picture of where taxpayers' money is going. I think a lot of the money in the years past may no longer be needed because of advancement in technology or change or department direction. I think they might still be needed, but we don't know unless myself and the city council review the previous allocations for all the years past and review the budget in all of its entirety. But I would like to see our police department well-funded. I think our police department is underfunded, in my opinion. We want to have a police department that's well-funded, well-trained to be able to keep up with all the changes we're seeing in Missoula. We want to modernize our police department. I also want our fire department to be well-funded and get the equipment that they need to carry out their duties. These folks are our first responders, and we owe it to them to keep them safe, to keep them well-trained to be able to carry out their jobs. Now, with all the pet projects the mayor is involved in, buying the sleeping in motel, now going out into the buying the ski hill and all these sort of land banking and all these things. That's not what your money is supposed to be used for. When you pay your taxes as taxpayer, you're paying for a limited range of services. You're paying for infrastructures, roads, and things of that nature. So I see my time is up there. But look, we have to start thinking about what has been done for those 16 years that hasn't worked, and moving forward with something that would work. Thank you.
Thank you. That wraps up the first portion of our forum today. And for the next part, we'll be taking audience questions. You'll have 1 minute to answer. And if you'd like to offer a rebuttal to anybody else's statement after you have spoken, please just signal to me and I will call on you as I'm able to get to you. The first question comes from Daniel Carlino, and this is a question for all 4 candidates. What is your approach to police and community safety? Jacob, you can get us started.
Yeah, well, that's a great question, and I've made several posts about it in recent days. I think that the idea that we should abolish our police is insanity. I've never seen that work anywhere, and frankly, it would not work here in Missoula. Now, often people are saying, well, the things that are happening nationally, police brutality and all those things, yeah, we care about people's safety. We care about the things that are happening nationally. But in our community, in Missoula, those issues are not unique to our community. But often we want to react to what's happening nationally and then bring down the wraith and say, well, let's abolish our police department. I don't believe in that. And also the idea that we should defund our police, I think that's nonsensical as well. If you could come up with a research that shows that defunding the police would keep our community safer, I'll be willing to look into it. Well, at this point, I think our police department has done a great job, and I will continue to support them. I will have their backs. And you can always count on me to represent our police department, but ensure that they're adequately trained to carry out their duties.
I realize that a minute doesn't give us a lot of time, and I'm sorry to cut anybody off. I really don't want to interrupt anybody in the middle of a sentence. So if we could try to pay close attention to that time limit card when it flashes, I'd appreciate it. John, it's your turn to talk about your approach to police and community safety.
Thanks, Tyler. So over the course of the last 16 years, I've been an advocate for police funding. When I was first mayor, officers at the city of Missoula were among the lowest paid in the state compared to peer cities. And during our first set of contract negotiations, I leaned in and worked with the police chief and our collective bargaining unit to ensure that those folks were brought up to market rate as quickly as possible. We were training people and then having them walk across the street. So currently we're at or above market, and I think that's significant. What we pay people has a lot to do with whether we attract talent and whether we keep talent. Second, I think if you look at the noise last year around defunding police and what I did in response to that noise, you'll see leadership. We funded additional officers, we funded additional training, and we took the right steps to do the right thing at the right time.
Thank you. Now it's time for Sean's response.
Yeah, defunding the police is a ridiculous idea, and the tides are changing. If you look at the East Coast and the West Coast, they're starting to realize that that's a bad idea, and it's swaying the other way. We are Montana. We're not the Wild West still, though, so we need to increase the police force, have a zero tolerance for crime. Is the only way that we're going to move forward with a safe city here.
Thank you. And Greg?
Well, in 2020, we gave the police about $18 million in the budget. Last year, we gave them an extra $1 million. And this year, they're asking for about $2 million more. I hope the city council gives them all they want. They want things like some equipment to help protect them against fentanyl. They want some new vests. They have a few other things. I think most of these costs are completely justified. And I just hope that the city council and the mayor don't kind of undercut some of this funding like I think they did last year when they wanted a few more officers than they finally got, because we are expanding the boundaries of the city, getting out to the airport. We need to fund these people. They got a hard, tough job. Homeless problems only increasing. And these people are frontline folks that are dealing with this every day.
Thank you. I don't see any hands raised for rebuttal, so we'll move on to the next question from the audience. And this comes from Pete Talbot for Greg Strandberg. It says, you are an anti-vaxxer. How would you deal with the current surge of COVID-19 in Missoula?
Well, I'm not sure there is a surge of COVID-19 in Missoula, really. We haven't had a death from COVID in Montana since the end of June. I think most people are safe. I work at a busy downtown establishment, and people are close together all the time, having fun. A lot of people are getting sick. I think it's kind of overblown. If you want to take the vaccine, hey, go for it. There are a lot of places open for you, but I don't think we should ridicule or browbeat the people that still have questions about this this experimental gene therapy vaccine that hasn't quite been approved by the FDA yet.
Thank you for answering that question. With no rebuttals offered, I'll ask the next question from John Menson. It says, as many of us retirees, we have just received our increased tax valuation, which will result in a large increase in our property taxes. He says his own property taxes have increased as much as 30%. Living on a fixed income, this continuing increase makes it difficult to stay in the city that he loves. How are you going to propose a way that this can be rectified? And let's start the answers for all the candidates with John Engen, please.
Well, thanks, Tyler, and thanks for the question. And it's one that I hear a lot. Are folks getting priced out of this place they love by virtue of the fact that that we're, to a certain degree, victims of our own success? Rising property values, generally speaking, is a good thing. And I think if they were going the other way, we would have a series of additional challenges. But again, we're back to this antiquated tax system. And if there are some ways that we can diversify our revenue stream, that local option sales tax that's deployed in smaller communities around the state to great effect would be a boon for Missoula, and we'll continue to advocate for that at the legislature. In the meantime, I am holding levies flat this year, held levies flat last year, and any time that I'm in a position to do that, I will. In addition, low-income property owners do have access to some abatement programs, and contacting Marty Rabine at the city clerk's office can get you on that path to get some help. In a number of cases, we've been able to give folks some relief who are retired, again, on a fixed income and struggling to pay that tax bill.
Thank you. Sean, could you please take a turn next?
Yeah, 2 years ago, I got a surge of customers that had me come out and work on their homes so that they could ready them for sale because they couldn't afford their taxes. That was the kick in the pants to start running for this office. I think the program that John was talking about, I believe it only helps on homes up to about $220,000, which is very few houses in this town. I talked to a voter the other day that says if his taxes go up one more, or his property value goes up one more time, he's off of that program and have to sell his house. So I think we need to figure out a way to cap somebody's taxes, which is probably going to take going to the state and figuring out a way to change these antiquated tax laws. But I just don't feel that Missoulians need to be able to stay Missoulians, and we're being priced right out of the town. So there has to be a way to fix that.
Greg, could you talk next about how you would help the tax situation for those on a fixed income?
Okay, thanks. I don't think that you're going to be able to count on the legislature for anything anytime soon, especially when it comes to Missoula. And I don't agree that having another local option sales tax is the right answer for Missoula. Nor do I think even this county idea of having a marijuana tax is a good idea. 3%, the county splits the 300,000 they bring in. They're going to try to reduce property taxes with 150,000. Give me a break. It's a joke. The only thing you can do is you got to reduce spending and you got to get this under control. They're going to keep raising taxes every year because they know they can. They know they can get away with it. There's always going to be some little thing they're trying to sneak on the ballot to increase their money. The city's desperate for money because they got a $14 million budget deficit every year, and that's their own fault. They're bringing in $190 million in revenue every year. So there's no reason to keep raising these taxes. We need to lower them.
Thank you, Greg. Jacob?
Yeah, well first, again, the mayors have 16 years to get these things done, and we're in the position we're in. So we need strong leadership, and we're asking the private sector to cut housing costs, but a large portion of people's mortgages are property taxes. And we need somebody that can prioritize the needs and make our money be spent in the most efficient way. So Missoula's high burden of taxation is a direct result of its rapid government growth. So now, as a rule, a fiscally responsible budget means spending grows at most the rate of economic growth. Missoula has far outpaced this measure over the last decade, necessitating the imposition of higher taxes, special assessment, and many fees. So again, when we pay our taxes, we're paying for a limited range of services, but our tax dollars have been just abused a year in, a year out. And the mayor has increased taxes each year. He said he would, and he's done just that. Enough is enough. Enough is enough.
Good for your answer to that. John, I see you'd like to offer a rebuttal.
How much time for rebuttal, Tyler?
30 seconds.
30 seconds. All right. I'll be quick. So a couple of things. It's really easy to say that we're wasting money, but you have to be specific about what money is being wasted, and you can't have it both ways. You can't cut taxes and fund police. It's just not the way the world works. We do not have a deficit. We do have a structural imbalance moving forward, but that's something that we're addressing every year through investment in our fund balance. And I'm out of time.
Thank you. You might have the opportunity to expand on those ideas later on with further questions. I see they're stacking up in their Q&A, and we have another 50 in the pile. So without further delay, the next question comes from Dwight Easton, and it is for Mayor Engen. He asks, could you expand on the actions that you have taken during previous years which have mitigated today's housing situation?
Absolutely. So one of the first steps was years ago, and that was revising Title 19, our, again, antiquated zoning code, and getting Title 20 on the books, which helped. It didn't help enough. So as we move forward, we're doing a couple of things. One is we've completely reorganized the planning office. That comes on the heels of a reorganization where we split the city and county's planning office. That was an organization that wasn't working particularly well. We have leadership in place. We're working directly with the development community, people who build houses, to talk about barriers and obstacles and how we can address those barriers and obstacles. And through unified code, we should be able to take a lot of the extra steps and time out of the process.
Thank you. Our next question is from Nancy Picard. I think it is for all of the candidates who are able to answer. She would like to know the number of houses, townhomes, condos that are on VRBO or Airbnb, which have effectively taken them off the rental market, and how these have affected the housing market. Finally, she'd like to know, is the city taxing these VRBOs and Airbnbs? John, if you know,
I don't have the data to answer that question.
Is anybody able to answer a question? Yes, Greg?
Yeah, if you do a simple search on the Airbnb site from Missoula, you see that they have 300 plus homes available. And if you narrow the search down to actual just houses, it's 300 plus. So that's a lot right there. You know, there's at least 300 houses in Missoula that you can rent from Airbnb. And that sounds like a lot, but we need to be building 300 a year. Remember, we're already 1,200 behind. And so even if you took all of those off the Airbnb site and started renting them out or something, which is no guarantee, by the way, I'm not sure it's going to have the kind of dent in our housing prices that we want. Whether they're being taxed or not, I looked into that a few years ago. I think the legislature was as well. And I think they were working on making sure that they were paying taxes.
Thank you, Greg. I believe John had an answer next.
Yeah, so like Greg, our data today is anecdotal. City Council through this budget process will be hiring a consultant to do an inventory of VRBO. There is some interest in regulating through council, but it's pretty challenging. Rental regulation in the state of Montana for municipalities has been extremely curtailed by the Montana legislature. But we do need to understand a little bit about what that inventory looks like and see what steps we can possibly take. Those folks aren't being taxed beyond their property taxes. They may have some income tax implications, so function of state and federal taxes, but there's no municipal income tax.
Thank you. And Jacob, you wanted to say something as well?
Yeah, so Airbnb, they're out of the control of the council. But what is in control is we need to make it easier to build. So let's not get distracted by things out of our control. Now, we need to get out of the way of builders and developers to enable them to build. There's all these red tapes. If you go in there to try to get a permit to build, it takes months, even years. Now, that drives a demand, and we have less supply. So we shouldn't be here talking about Airbnb when builders are not allowed to build because they're not granted these permits. Let's stick to the issue that are impacting our community that we are all here to talk about, housing crisis.
Thank you. It looks like Greg wants to offer a rebuttal.
Yeah, I just have to say one in response to the mayor. I don't think hiring another consultant for $30,000 is really the right answer. I'm sure they'll probably come from Florida. We have a level fare with consultants from Florida. They redesigned our downtown master plan. We could have an existing city worker do this study and save $30,000 easy.
It's time for our next question. It comes from Leslie Vakulik, and it's for all the candidates. We'll start the answering with Sean. The question is, will you work to reduce property taxes? How and where does it fall in your priorities?
Well, it falls high on my priority. It's going to be a delicate issue with balancing the budget and reducing taxes, but it's very high on the priority.
Do you have any answer for how you would reduce property taxes?
We need to lower the debt so that we're not spending so much money on that, so that we can shift that payment from taxes to and stop the frivolous spending on parks, the buying up property that's not in the city, and redirect that money so we can lower taxes.
Thank you. Greg, would you like to answer next about property taxes?
Well, the city brings in $26 million a year in property tax revenue, and that makes up about half of the $58 million that's in the general fund. Again, reducing debt, getting rid of these interest payments we have on debt, making sure the city workers can do things that we're contracting out to private businesses, looking at this $5.4 million in other that we have that there's no description of in the budget. There are many ways, if you dig into this budget, you can find ways to spend money so we can just, first of all, stop raising property taxes. And then eventually when we get spending under control, we can start reducing the pain by lowering them again.
Thank you. Jacob, would you like to answer the question next?
Yeah, I mean, it should be known that our city leaders have a spending problem. So one example that I could think about here, again, mountain water is another example, but the argument isn't about owning the water. There is no need to argue that point. But when we look at what the results of the 2018 through 2020 shows, the city has spent only $3.6 million per year over contributions, which means they're spending less than annual depreciation on capital improvement. However, the city net income of $8 million over a 3-year period, the actual result shows a $6 million net loss. So at any point, Mountain Water is losing $2 million a year, and we keep spending this money on these things that the mayor predicted and it hasn't fell through. So again, we need to rein in spending. It's not our money. We need to stop spending on pet projects. That doesn't work. Like the mayor 10-year plan, where he said we'll end homelessness in 10 years. Well, we put millions of dollars into that plan and we're still here. It hasn't worked. Stop the pet projects.
It's John's turn to answer, and then we'll get to rebuttals.
Thank you. So clearly, if I could reduce property taxes, I would. But that, given the circumstances, all that we've talked about up until now during this conversation, we're not going to do that without additional revenue. So we need to pursue additional revenue. Debt is the boogeyman of the day, and I will suggest a couple of things. That a great deal of that debt is a function of voters voting to tax themselves to support a variety of projects, including the library, including open space, including Fort Missoula Regional Park. And Mr. Elder appears to be looking at a different set of books than I am with regard to mountain water, which is an unmitigated success. We are keeping water rates low. We're investing more than Mr. Elder suggests in infrastructure every year. And we're not doing that at the expense of taxpayers. It's a discrete fund. It's rate based, and I'm done.
Thank you for your answer. Sean, I believe you wanted to rebut that.
I just wanted to add one thing, that all these pet projects that we buy up, one of the things that people don't see is that pulls that off the tax record. So we lose the tax revenue on those properties too. Mountain water being one of the biggest ones.
And Jacob?
Yeah, so I think what the mayor just stated isn't really accurate at all. Often we're not really transparent with our constituents, and that's just the problem. We're not transparent with our constituents. So the mayor said, well, the water, we're having a positive net income there. But after 4 years of operating results, the city is losing money annually. 2 million of operating income, but have to pay $4 million of annual interest. So that's a net loss of over 2 million, and not spending the money the mayor said he is on capital improvement. I think one of the city council members just penned an op-ed stated that the debt is important. My son will have to pay this thing up. Enough is enough.
Our next question is from Lorraine Bond, and it's for all the candidates. We'll start with Greg for answers. She says, one of the criticisms of the current administration is that many people feel they're not being listened to. Missoula has become a community that caters to people who have more property, money, etc. How will you ensure that all people's viewpoints are considered when making key decisions?
Well, I think one of the first things that we could do that's quite simple is maybe reopening the city council meetings. I think it's been a couple months that city workers have all been back in the office. How come we're still doing city council meetings on Zoom? How come we're doing this city club meeting on Zoom? I mean, a lot of places around town are pretty busy. We could all be doing that. That's one thing I think right away. Another thing, I think the mayor is trying to get something going where he has more outreach with the city, which I think they're going to spend money on. I think that's the wrong approach. Maybe we could just do some more of this stuff on Facebook and listen to people's opinions, because they're more than happy to give them there.
Thank you for your answer, Greg. Jacob, it's your turn.
Yeah, look, I think, again, a lack of transparency and a lack of two-way communication we see all the time in our city leadership. From my experience, I tried to get a hold of the mayor for weeks, and I had to go through his aide and schedule. Initially, the mayor wanted to do Zoom, and I said, let's do it in public. The mayor is never on social media or anywhere that you can reach him until it's election season, and then he would throw up a Facebook page or an Instagram page to interact with his constituents. That is not the role of a mayor. You serve the people, and you ought to communicate with the people at all times. You work for the people. So I'll have an open door policy. If you will be able to get a hold of me just by picking up the phone and dialing my number, I'm working for you. I report to you, and so we're focused on transparency here. We're not going to be making backroom deals or excluding you out of meetings that you should be informed about. So two-way communication is what you're going to expect from me.
Thank you, Jacob. John, it's your turn.
Yes. So I think the question was.
How will you
whether we listen to people? Yeah, whether we listen to people, and we do. And I think I can tell you after sitting through public hearings for almost every week for 20 years, I still listen to people. Whether I agree with them is another question, and I think sometimes we conflate listening and agreeing. But we have more opportunities to access leadership and information than we've ever had, and we do pay attention. I listen. The city council listens. There's nobody who wants to schedule an appointment with me who doesn't get one, and unless there are some extraordinary circumstances. And the reason it's hard to get me is because a lot of people want to see me. So sometimes folks have to wait in line, and that's unfortunate, but they never wait in line at the grocery store. They never wait in line when I'm at a public event where I reach out and spend time with folks.
And it's Sean's turn to answer the question again.
Could you repeat the question now, please?
How will you ensure that all people's viewpoints are considered when making key decisions?
Well, I would have an open door policy. Anybody that wants to see me will have the opportunity to see me. I've been trying to reach the mayor's office for 4 years now, and I can't even get an email back from the assistant. So that would never happen if I was in office.
Thank you for your answer. Any rebuttals? Moving on to the next question.
I got a rebuttal, Tyler.
Okay, I think your hand up was at the same time as Jacob, so why don't you go ahead and go first, and then Jacob can answer.
All right, thanks. Look, Sean, I'm sorry that should have been your experience. My phone number is all over the website, as is my email, and I'd be happy to reach out and chat anytime. That's plenty.
Jacob,
Yeah.
your turn.
So again, we're here. It's election season. We're on Zoom. We're talking about why we deserve this job. So the mayor keeps saying, well, I'm reachable. That's just not the case. I've spoken with hundreds of Missoulians that share the same issue where they cannot get a hold of the mayor when they need to. That there's all these barriers between the mayor and his constituents, and I don't believe that that's what transparency is or what a good leadership is. So you can always expect me to communicate with you when in times of needs. Again, an open door policy. Let's be honest with the people here.
Thank you. Our next question is from Jerome Dernberger for all the candidates. A subset of the homeless community is the transient one. This group are very visible throughout the downtown area and have gotten worse over the years. What will you do to solve this problem? We'll start with Jacob.
Well, thank you. Again, our homeless issue, it's really a human issue, and it's multifaceted, and it takes a lot of looking at all the moving parts to put a dent in this issue. Now the mayor has this 10-year plan, again, that he came out and introduced. He said at any time you have this percentage of people come out of homelessness, but the same percentage are going back into homelessness. Now, when you think about that, that's sort of just maintaining this thing, right? And then we want to throw people in tents. I believe those folks have more dignity to be just lower to tents. I want to put people in permanent housing. I don't want them to be around the streets. I don't want them to just be roaming around. So what we're going to do is look, if you're homeless, if you're from our community, we're going to say, look, if you have mental health problems, we'll send you to treatment. If you have substance abuse problem, we'll send you to rehab. And when you come back, we'll work with businesses and give them a tax credit to hire you. And if they have issues with you, they just call up your probation officer. But you need housing. We need affordable housing. We need to understand the root cause of the problem.
And it's John's turn to answer the question next.
So these issues are incredibly complex, and the solutions are not simple. And Jerry's question was about transients, and we've been working on transient issues, which I think are a little bit different from homeless issues, for many years, and there are some distinctions. Jacob's right. We need housing, we need treatment, and we need opportunities for these folks to get off the street. So what have we done? We created a 10-year plan to end homelessness. We created a coordinated entry system that helps homeless folks get into the system with as little hassle as possible. We created the Trinity Project, which will have a navigation center and provide low-income housing, and in some cases, permanent supportive housing for folks who would never have an opportunity to be housed safely in our community. And we're investing while the thanks.
Thank you.
Nuance, right?
Sean, the question has to deal with visible downtown transient community.
Well, the transients is one issue. There's several fingers of this problem we have. I would like to start a task force of volunteers in the mental field, the alcohol abuse field, and put a task force together to identify the root problem of each individual. Again, a blanket approach is not going to help, so we need to get to the root cause of each one. The transients, complete different. I think on the transient level, we need to have a zero tolerance for crime. If they're committing a crime, they need to go into that system as well. But until we get to the root cause of each individual's problem, we're never going to solve this issue.
Thank you. Greg?
Yeah, I would just say that I think we got a huge problem with transients. Transients are often able-bodied young men and women that just want to sit around and get high and drunk all day. And we coddle and we enable that. We should be giving them tough love. I think we need to start thinking about getting our churches more involved. These people are never going to change until they decide change is coming. Maybe they need to get God in their lives. I don't know. But in the meantime, if they're going to be sitting there poking them needles in their arms, getting high, out on the public streets, we need to arrest these people and we need to put them in jail. And I'm getting tired of hearing them getting out of jail within a day or so and then getting arrested at the paw for holding knives to people's throats. We got a serious problem here. We are coddling and enabling the wrong people.
Thank you, Greg. Jacob, I see you'd like to rebut that.
Yeah, so again, speaking on this issue, I was homeless for 10 years in Africa. I understand the intricacies of homelessness. Now there are a subcategory of homeless folks, and we call it transients. Now, we don't have ample resources in Missoula to keep encouraging transients to come over. We're using up taxpayers' dollars. So look, if you're from our community and you need a hand up, we'll give you a hand up. If you're not from our community, we'll put you to work. We just don't have the resources to keep doing that. If you create all these incentives for transients to come to your community, they will show up to your doorway. So we want to ban public camping, ban public drug consumption, and get these folks the help they need. I believe that if you try to shield people from adversity, you're really shielding them from the things that give them strength. So we're not here to grab people's hand and walk them through life. We're here to get you off your feet, create opportunities for you to do for yourself.
Thank you. Our next question, I believe, is for all the candidates again. It comes from Joseph Sukenik. What is your policy stance on access to mental and addiction services, particularly with the homeless community? And John, it is your turn to answer the question first.
Yes, so I sit on a group of community leaders called the Strategic Alliance for Behavioral Health. And that organization, working with the local hospitals, mental health providers, has been identifying gaps in the system and working to close those gaps. One of the most significant gaps is crisis stabilization and treatment. Missoula does not have treatment facilities commensurate with our population or the need. No place does, but working with that partnership, we've identified what I think are a couple of opportunities for us to move forward, both through relationships with the hospitals who know what they're doing, and through some of the other non-government organizations who chip away at behavioral health. Sorry, red flag.
Thank you. Sean?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that I started a volunteer task force last week looking into what we're spending for security and other aspects of the homeless population to see if we can redirect that money into starting a larger or a new mental health facility and drug rehab program.
Thank you for your answer. Greg, it's your turn.
Well, I think the access to mental and addiction health services is very important, but I don't think it's a real priority for the city. We give millions and millions of dollars to private developers each year for their little pet projects, but we don't give that much money to these kind of things. But I bet the community wants it. We need to start asking more of the community members to step up, especially, like I said, some of the churches. A lot of these people need help. Also, if we're going to be spending quite a bit of money this winter on some new homeless camps, perhaps we should have some outreach people working there to help these people with those issues.
Thank you. Jacob?
Tyler, can you repeat that question, please?
Sure, it is. What is your policy stance on access to mental and addiction services, particularly with regard to the homeless community? Yeah,
so as a Marine veteran, in the last 3 years, I've lost 7 of my friends to suicide, PTSD. I take this thing near and very seriously. And you know, that's always the root cause, more than likely the root cause of homelessness and all these things. So I intend to work, again, to work with our community health partners, such as the National Alliance of Mental Illness, and to provide diverse and affordable health services, outreach teams in partnership with local nonprofits committed to assisting the street homeless. So we benefit as a community when our friends and neighbors suffering from behavioral health disorder receive treatment and help. It helps them get back into the workforce and contribute to society. So we need these are all things that intersect, that we have to look at the bigger picture and take care of the root cause. So I'm committed to ensuring that our friends suffering with mental health illness get the treatment they need.
Thank you for your answer. Any rebuttals? Our next question comes from Anna Beard, and it's for all the candidates. It's a two-part question. What kind of support do you feel would be valuable change to support single parent or low-income families within our community? The second part of that question is, who are you looking forward to connecting with to focus on this work? And Sean, it is your turn to go first.
Well, as a single father raising two kids, it's very near and dear to my heart. I would like to see outreach programs with the churches and other nonprofits to provide help, daycare, so single parents can go to work and succeed in life. They need a lot of help. It's a very hard job to raise a kid as a two-person family, let alone a one parent. So we need outreach. I'm not sure that it needs to be city funded, but possibly we could help with there too. But we already have an overspending problem, so it's a delicate balance there. So it would be nice to be able to look to some of the nonprofits to help with some of these issues.
Thank you. Greg?
Okay, when I hear single parent, I think of daycare and childcare, like Sean was just talking about there. I have a unique perspective with that. Up until a month or so ago, my wife was a co-owner of a Montessori daycare in town, and one of the reasons she stopped doing that is because she was burned out. These people are working their butts off. They're not getting paid anything, and you can't really raise prices that much on families because they don't have a lot to spend anyways. And it's a huge problem. I know that Governor Gianforte right now is trying to direct some of the federal American Rescue Plan money towards that issue, and I hope it helps.
Thank you. Jacob?
So as a child, as a person that grew up with a single mother in a war-torn country, I empathize with single parents. I understand. I going to school, seeing some of my classmates, the kids to school, I empathize with those folks. And so one of the ways we can help here is really by lowering housing costs, by allowing more development, and lowering taxes, because that hit the single parents the hardest. We can do this with greater efficiency, not cutting services. So again, we want to work with say our university system, our employers, to ensure that our single parents can be able to work and go to school and still be there for their kids. I do not want our family unit to be broken, or where kids are not spending time with their parents. The importance of kids growing up in a household where they have their parents in the household with them to spend time with them is very important. That's the very fabric of our society. It's the nuclear family and ensuring that those families are prospering.
Our next question comes from Don
Hey,
Mallett.
do I get a shot at that one, Tyler?
Oh, did you have a rebuttal, John? Go ahead.
I was it only for the other three? I thought it was for me as well.
Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped you. Go ahead.
That's okay. I get a lot of that. So I think Sean and Greg point out absolutely accurately that daycare is a critical component. So we've been working with United Way, and some of you know Grace Decker, who is incredibly knowledgeable and a great advocate around provision of daycare services. And we've been working toward a program where while universal pre-K isn't happening at the state level, trying to figure out a way to do that locally. And we've gotten to the point where we actually have a price tag for that. And I think some opportunity to move forward. Through the pandemic, our Parks and Recreation Department stepped up and provided some daycare in the form of after-school recreation programs, and we continued that through the summer. And we're piloting a project at Lowell School that's fascinating. And it's a community center model that not only supports the kiddos, but also supports their families, creating opportunities for families to spend time in that facility and have the support they need to move forward.
Thank you. Jacob?
The mayor is talking about all these projects. Again, one of the things that I think about is we're trying to compete with the free market enterprise or our nonprofits. The YMCA has done a wonderful job. I went there and spoke with their director, but yeah, we were trying to compete with these folks and by building these community centers, and that's not the goal of that's not the role of the government. We create opportunities for people to prosper. Let the private sector handle these issues and stay out of the way of the free market enterprise.
John.
So I'm meeting with the YMCA because they want us to collaborate with them. I meet with Lowell School because they would like us to collaborate with them. This is about collaboration, not competition, and ain't nobody going to get this done alone.
That's all the time we have for that question. Moving on, the next one is from Don Mallock, and it's for all the candidates. Would you support and execute a policy of having a citywide vote on all acquisitions over $100,000 prior to purchase? This would include the cost of purchase, the intended use, and projected future costs, such as maintenance. And Greg, I believe it's your turn to answer it first.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that's kind of a low amount to put any kind of ceiling on. I do agree that we do need to rein in some of these bigger spending projects. And let me just give you a couple of examples of some of the debt that the city wants to take on over the next 5 years. $26 million to purchase the Fox Hotel Conference Center, $16 million for Parks and Recs, $4.2 million for road improvements on Mary Jane Avenue to help out the new, I believe, Costco there. We are just moving in the wrong direction in a lot of these things, and I think we need to have a lot more citizen oversight. And when it comes to some of these things that we vote on, I'm wondering, why did they even get on the ballot in the first place?
Thank you, Greg. Jacob.
Right. Please repeat your question, Tyler.
Sure. It is, would you support and execute a policy of having a citywide vote on all acquisitions over $100,000 prior to purchase?
Right. It's hard to put my finger on that number and what that entails, but what I do support is full transparency at all times. I do support our community participating in all of the dealings of the city. Now, when you start excluding the community out of those decision-making processes, you sort of making these backroom deals, and that's hurt our city for years. So we need to get the city involved and get them to vote on issues that are going to be impacting their life. So I'll look at the metrics, whatever the numbers are, and obviously with the city council consent and with advisors, and I will work with that. But I want to include our community to be a part of all of our decision-making process.
John, how would you answer that question?
I would say that $100,000 is probably a low amount for that, but I would support some issue like that. I'm tired of finding out about acquisitions after they've happened, or hearing that the mayor has made deals or offers without the city council's approval even. So transparency would be a huge policy. Everybody should know what their money is being spent on.
And John, would you support a policy and vote?
No, yeah. The short answer is no. The longer answer is it costs about $80,000 to run an election. So if we start making budgeting decisions through referenda, I think that's an incredibly inefficient way to run a government. There is an important referendum, and it's coming right up. And it's coming right up, and that's who you support in the mayor's race. Do you support somebody who you trust to be a good steward of resources? And if folks don't trust me to be that steward, if folks don't trust the Missoula City Council to be that steward, they have an opportunity to vote for someone else and make some different choices. We are as transparent as we can possibly be as we present opportunities to the City Council. Sometimes we move quickly, but there is no decision that gets made, no significant spending decision that gets made without the support of the City Council and without public input.
Greg, you had a comment?
Yeah, I think that's kind of a little naive there, because we're spending $114,000 for this mayoral primary election, which is just a waste of money. We didn't need to spend that. We had 4 candidates running for mayor a few years ago, and we didn't have a primary.
And Jacob would like to say something.
Yeah, it sounds like the mayor is saying that democracy is too expensive. We can always ask the voters about big projects, and if we can't afford that, then we shouldn't be buying that particular asset. So again, if our city leaders have been transparent, we wouldn't be in the position we're in. We have a homeless crisis. We have a housing crisis. We have failing infrastructures. These are all things that are happening in our community. I've talked to the people. I've talked to hundreds of people, and these are their concerns.
Thank you. The next question is for you, Jacob. It comes from Nick Davis. As one of the many dozens of Missoulians who have been blocked by you on social media, I question your commitment to transparency and accountability. How will you deal with legitimate critical input from coworkers and the public?
Right. So I'm going to quote the mayor here. In the past, the mayor has stated that, look, we're not going to allow people to campaign for other candidates on his platform. I'm not in the business of allowing people to campaign for the mayor on my platform. And that's just been the case. But often some of these commenters are commenting divisive and misleading narrative and borderline bullying other people on our supporters on our social media. What do we teach the younger generation if we allow others to bully other people on social media? I don't tolerate that. I would never tolerate that. As mayor of the city, we would not tolerate such behavior. So it starts with my campaign. In the past, you may have been able to go on other candidates' platform and bully other people, but that stops with my campaign. Now I'm open to open dialogue where if you have questions, people are asking questions all the time. I actually reach out to some of these people to set up a meeting, and they don't want to. Some of them are saying, well, no, answer our question online. It's like, if you really want your questions answered, I'm all yours. Now I've spent hours on the phone with people in the past. But again, I'm not going to tolerate bullying. I'm not going to tolerate divisive and misleading narrative.
Do any of the other candidates have a comment? Yes, John?
I'm sorry. I just thought I heard Mr. Elder suggest that I had bullied someone online, and I don't spend any time online, so I don't.
No. Sorry, Mayor Engen. I'm talking about the folks that are coming on there commenting and bullying other people. Those are the folks that we delete off our platform because we don't tolerate those behaviors. But I think what I was saying is this: in the past, you've mentioned that you're not going to allow other people to campaign for other candidates on your platform. And so I'm just living up to the standard you've set, Mayor. I'm not in the business of allowing these folks to come there and campaign for you. They could go do that on your page, which again, it will be, having social media thrown up during election season. I just think that's just such disservice to our community. We should always have a platform where our constituents can meet you and ask you the tough questions.
The next question is from Devin Felicia for all candidates. How will you address the growing concern of climate change resilience in Missoula? And Jacob, why don't you go ahead and answer that one first too?
I support everything climate change. My unborn son, Jackson, he's due this December. And he's going to be here long after I leave and after we all leave this earth. So I support, again, a clean climate. I support measures that are gonna address climate change and climate crisis. I'm willing to work with the groups that are doing the work. I'm willing to hear them out, and I'm willing to see the metrics that they have come up with and that they've considered the unintended consequences. And there has to be some accountability, and I'll work with them. I'm open to it. We all want a clean climate. We all want fresh air. Smoke in the air and all these things are hazardous to our health. And so I want my child, Jackson, to be able to live in a world that he is safe and can breathe fresh air like anyone else can. So I support climate change initiatives.
John?
So I started climate work when mayors weren't talking about global warming or climate change because it was a political third rail. And over the course of my tenure, we've created a climate action plan that followed a climate inventory, understanding what the city's greenhouse gas footprint, our carbon footprint was. We hired an individual and now have created an office around sustainability. to execute that climate action plan. We also work collaboratively, again, with organizations in the community around the state and around the nation in climate resilience. Our dedication through our utilities in particular, I think, is an interesting place to see our words put into action. Our wastewater treatment facility today is really just a giant recycling facility, and I'm out of time.
Thank you for your answer. Sean?
I believe that there's probably a small amount of work that a mayor can do on climate change, but I support it strongly. I have a grandson that I want him to be able to breathe as he grows up. It's a worldwide problem. As much as the United States can do, we have to look to the other countries like China and stuff that are producing massive amounts of pollution. I commend the city of Missoula on their transferring to the electric buses. I'd like to continue that process and put as few emissions into the air as possible.
Thank you. Greg?
When it comes to climate change and the environment, Missoula talks a big game, but they don't really walk the walk. How many people are still using plastic bags at the grocery store? That's a personal choice, but I think over half the people are not even bringing their own bag to the grocery store. I mean, how about glass recycling? This is an issue that we've been talking about for years. We give millions of dollars every year to developers. Why don't we work with the county or maybe even neighboring counties to invest in a glass recycling plant here in Missoula or in Western Montana somewhere to take care of this? Another thing is the city dump. I'm getting tired of hearing how the garbage is blown out onto the interstate. Why don't we work on that? So there's a lot of things that we can do right here in our own community. And I think we need to start thinking globally, but act locally.
Thank you. Anything more to add? Our next question is from Erica Grant for all the candidates. According to SAMHSA National Guidelines for Behavioral Health Crisis Care, an effective crisis response model should include the following: 1, 24/7 crisis call center, 2, crisis mobile team response, and 3, crisis receiving and stabilization facilities. Do you agree that we should start moving in this direction? John, we'll start with you.
I absolutely agree, and 2 out of 3 ain't bad. So that crisis line does exist, and we're very proud of the collaborative work we've done with Partnership Health Center through the Missoula Fire Department for our mobile response team, which is an alternative response to folks experiencing mental or behavioral health crises. That team is now rolling 7 days a week. We don't have a 24/7 response, but hope to get there eventually. And what that's doing is relieving police officers in many cases from those calls for service where it's really not a criminal issue. It's not a public safety issue as much as it's an issue for that individual. Having said that, however, we are training our officers in crisis intervention as well to ensure in those cases where an officer is responding, he or she is trained for that response.
Thank you. Sean, crisis response?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Do you agree that we should start moving in this direction? And it was having to do with the guidelines for an effective crisis response model.
Absolutely, we do. We need to expand on what Mayor Engen has already talked about. It's already in place. We just need more staffing so that we can get it 24/7.
Thank you. And Greg?
Okay, yeah, I'm not that familiar with this because I think it's a new unit. I know that we're spending $450,000 next year with police mobile crisis response unit. So I think we're moving in the right direction. Again, I'm always happy about giving the police the money they want. They got a tough job.
Thank you. Jacob?
Yeah, I support the hybrid system where we have health professionals riding along with our police officers because not all of those calls are are criminal in nature. Some of those calls are just people having mental breakdown. But one of the things that I see in Missoula is that multiple organizations are not communicating uniformly. And so you have the breakdown in communication in these areas. So we want to get, I want to implement sort of a database that allows people from several organizations to comprehend each case, but also working closely with our police department and those mental health professionals to carry out their duties. So I support the hybrid system, and I think we should do more with that. But we also have to, again, spend wisely, because currently, talking to people, we're spending some of the funds that we're spending on that initiative. It's really nonsensical.
Thank you. Any further comment? Okay, the next question from Sarah Johnson is for all candidates. Specifically, how do you propose to balance a budget when you want to reduce revenues, such as taxes, and increase the budget for police? What programs would you cut? And Sean, it's your turn to start.
One question. Very important question. We need to stop the frivolous spending and buying up properties that we don't need at this moment, and transfer that money to the police department and other projects that are more frontline.
Thank you. Greg?
Okay. Well, right now, I think we're giving about $1.5 million to the police next year. So it's not like they're getting a huge amount of money anyways. I've already mentioned that we got about $5 million in other expenses. We have lots of miscellaneous expenses in the budget. We have tons of city workers that are overlapping with other things. There are plenty of things to cut. And I'm not talking about reducing taxes just next year, but once we get spending under control and we get this budget back in the black, we can start talking about that.
Okay, Jacob.
So again, we just have a spending problem. We have to rein in spending. So again, you shouldn't spend more than what you have coming in. That's just a business model. You will be in the hole. You will lose your business. So we've seen that the city has this sort of lavish spending problem, and that just isn't how you're supposed to spend taxpayers' money. So we keep spending growth with the rate of economic growth. So depending on our revenue is how much we will spend. But currently we have a large city government where you have 686 plus people, and we're allocating about $77 million a year to pay our employees and their benefits. That's a lot of money. Why do we have such large government? So we have to, again, look at those different areas, look at the different pet projects the mayor has been involved in. Now we're gonna acquire a federal building that has been built since 1930 with all sorts of problems, and so we're gonna fix it up and try to move in there. We got to stop these sort of nonsensical spending.
John, what programs would you look at cutting?
So you see my budget and you see that I am not proposing cuts. And I think it's important to recognize that statutorily, the city of Missoula has to present a balanced budget. Our budget is balanced every year. That doesn't mean that we don't have debt. We are also statutorily allowed to have debt. But what the city council has in front of it is a balanced budget where revenues and expenditures meet. Over time, some of those ongoing expenses, however, will not be covered by existing revenue, and we're going to have to deal with that. And we can deal with that a number of ways. I believe that as we grow our tax base, we have remarkable growth in tax base this year, both inside and outside of our TIF districts. And I believe that growth will assist. We're also capped by the legislature at increasing mill levies by half the rate of inflation over a 3-year average. So this notion that we're actually keeping up with inflation is also inaccurate.
Thank you. Sean, did I see you had further comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that, it's taken us a decade to get in this hole, so it's not going to be an overnight solution. It's going to take time to dig us back out of this hole.
And Jacob?
the mayor says, well, we have a balanced budget. Now, having audited financials doesn't say you are, in fact, operating the entity efficiently. It just states that you are properly reporting the accounting results. And those results clearly show that we are losing money each year and not spending the amount of money on capital improvements and in other areas that we need to spend. So again, efficiency and leadership is something that I learned very much in the Marine Corps. So there are things that I think people want, but there are everyone wants to have a safe community, affordable community. And so let's talk about those things and be transparent with people.
Jacob, the next question is for you. It's from Ben McKee. Last year, you were vocally supportive of the Black Lives Matter movement, attending a Black Lives Matter rally in Missoula, using slogans associated with the movement and expressing your intention to bring those values to the office of mayor. Recently, you have reversed your position and stated that you stand against Black Lives Matter. How would you respond to the perception that you are changing your positions on important issues mid-campaign for political expediency?
Yeah, short answer, that assertion is false. I've never, ever pledged allegiance to Black Lives Matter. Now, the killing of George Floyd, when I saw that, I was taken aback, and I wrote an op-ed talking about community togetherness. But I also went out there to protest, peaceful protest. It wasn't in the name of Black Lives Matter. It was just saying, look, we need to share light on some of these things happening. But with more research into Black Lives Matter, you will find out that the group does not have America's best interest at heart. They don't have the Black people best interest at heart. They're burning down their communities. They're killing people in the name of Black Lives Matter. It's such a divisive group that takes us 50 years back in time. So again, being Black doesn't mean by default that I should support all these Black movements. I think that's just a unrealistic expectation to have of me. I'm my own person, and I'm going to tell you, as I told you on Facebook, I'm going to share what I believe to give you an opportunity to make an informed decision when you're voting. So I don't support Black Lives Matter.
The next question comes from Aaron Curtis for all the candidates. How do you retain the character and soul of Missoula while also accepting the reality that so many out-of-state folks are moving here? And Greg, you can start our answers with that.
Okay, I think what we need to do is we need to start building more houses so that our longtime residents aren't kicked out of here. Because right now I'm talking to a lot of people at a lot of different businesses. A lot of businesses are losing quality long-term employees because they have rental insecurity where maybe their landlord sells the place out from under them. They can't find another place to live because we got less than 1%, 0.5% vacancy rate. And our bedroom communities of Florence, Alberton, Clinton, Lowell, these are all filled up too. Unless we start building our way out of this, we're going to have the soul of Missoula move out to other places because they just can't live here anymore. And it comes down to identifying places we can build affordable housing or any housing. We just need to start building more and more housing for all types because you got all income levels moving in here, buying up everything there is, forcing out longtime residents. And it's sad.
Thank you. Jacob?
Oh, please repeat the question, Tyler.
How do you retain the character and soul of Missoula while also accepting the reality that so many out-of-state folks are moving here?
Right. So Missoula wouldn't be Missoula if we allowed all people to move to Missoula. When I moved to this community over 10 years ago, I moved into a small, vibrant community with folks that have homesteaded here for generations. And that's what's unique about this community. We are surrounded 360 with mountains, recreation activities, but folks here are nice. You smile at people. Now I lived in New York City for 1 year, and I walked down the road and try to smile at folks, and they looked at me like I was crazy. But in Missoula, you see people, you acknowledge them and smile. So we want to keep the integrity of our community. And again, we have to be proactive about these things. If we don't take immediate action and demand measurable results, we risk losing the very fabric of our community and Missoulians who essentially will have to seek refuge in more affordable communities. So we want to keep our community members in our communities. They come first, over outsiders coming to our community.
John?
It's an interesting question, one I get fairly regularly, and having lived here all my life, what I've recognized is that the city of Missoula, by virtue of its residents, both those who have lived here for a long time and those who are new, value the place, they value the people, and they value the funkiness of the culture. Because this community is so engaged, I don't see the soul of Missoula disappearing anytime soon. I think the other thing to keep in mind is that we grow 1 to 2% a year, and we've been growing at 1 to 2% a year for a very long time now. And while it feels a little bit different post-pandemic and in light of housing crisis, we're not looking at the community being overrun by out-of-staters. We all come from someplace. We all have something to offer.
Thank you. Sean, how would you answer that question?
Well, I agree with all three of the candidates. One, if we run them out of housing, they're going to move out of here. So, the people that can't afford to live here, that part of Missoula will leave. So, as Greg said, we need to build more houses, make it affordable so that our Missoulians can stay Missoulians, to keep the fabric of our society here.
Our next question is from Joseph Suchnik, and it's for all the candidates. He says, I am a business owner in town and own an addictions clinic. Since I moved here, I can't seem to get into those closed door meetings, and every RFP either doesn't seem to be posted, or if awarded, the scoring isn't made public. How will you help me and other small businesses be more competitive in our market? John, could you answer that?
Yeah, and I'm sorry, I didn't hear what the business was, Tyler?
An addictions clinic.
An addiction clinic? Okay. Yeah, so I think we are pretty remarkably transparent about our requests for proposals. They're posted on website. We have legal advertisements, but if the person has some specifics, I'd be more than happy to have a conversation about those. But we try to keep the door open to lots of folks who want to vend with the city, and we're always looking for the best value we can find for that taxpayer dollar.
John?
Yeah, I agree with John. We need to work with all of the citizens in Missoula so that we can get equitable help. My door would always be open and very transparent.
Thank you. Greg?
Yeah, I don't know a whole lot about this issue, but I know that addiction services are one of the main things we need right now when it comes to the homeless crisis. So I find it surprising that you're getting stonewalled here and it's hard for you to get going. It should be easy. They should be knocking down your door trying to get you to help.
Thank you for your answer. Jacob?
Yeah, Joe, thanks for that question. And I've spoken with Joe on several occasions, and I hear your demands, Joe. We owe you more as a city. Now, from my research and talking to people, the mayor stopped working with our Chamber of Commerce a long time ago. Now, so I will come in here and work with our Chambers of Commerce to ensure that our local businesses are prospering. And so I strongly believe that our local businesses are the backbone of our economy. So, and they're desperately trying to hire people currently. And while the business property taxes are likely to skyrocket when they receive their tax bill the last week in October. So that's just before the general election. So as Missoula's next mayor, I will encourage our businesses to stay in town. I will implement incentives such as tax credits and exemptions to ensure that they prosper, which then would likely keep our local businesses booming. So I support you, have your back, and I will work with our Chamber of Commerce to ensure that you are prospering.
Thank you. I just want to make a note at this time that we have about 10 minutes left in our forum today and only time for a handful more questions. So please try to stay as on topic as possible and be as specific as possible. Our next question is for Jacob. It's from Jennifer Ewan. You state you are allowing for an open door regarding communication, yet you are known for systematically blocking and removing people from your social media platforms who simply ask questions. So how are we to trust that you wouldn't systematically block people from reaching you, which is the only thing we've seen to date, which directly contradicts what you said?
Yeah, I want to point out, Tyler, that question has already been addressed. That question has been asked. But again, I will say this. We are not blocking people or deleting people. It's in a sense where, look, we're running a campaign. We're a no-name candidate. We're trying to get our name out there. And there's these commenters that are spewing misleading comments and divisive comments. We're not going to tolerate that. If you want to campaign for John Engen, the mayor, go campaign for the mayor on his platform. On our platform, look, we're trying to get our message out. And that's just it. But you can, again, I pride myself in transparency. As your mayor, I'll be transparent with you. We're not going to be running a campaign. It's none of that. We're talking about the issues. So I think the noise of the select few that are saying we're blocking people, they don't represent our community at large. And those folks have now, really threatened our democracy here with such misleading smear narratives. And that's just what we've seen happen in our community for years. Anyone that dared to run against the mayor gets smeared, and we're not going to tolerate that.
Thank you. Any other comments on that? Okay. The next question is for Kate Budgie for all the candidates. Do you believe our current criminal justice system disproportionately impacts certain communities? If so, how? What remedies would you put in place to make the criminal justice system more just? Jacob, could you start?
So I don't have the data that shows that our criminal justice system here is disproportionately negatively impacting a few community. But one of the things that I can put my finger on is our LGBTQ plus community. Now, as a Black man in a primarily white city, I understand discrimination more than most. And we have an ordinance on books that protect our citizens from discrimination. And so I will always enforce those ordinances. In the event that your rights get taken advantage of, I will seek remedy to ensure that we don't tolerate such behaviors. I'm all about inclusivity. So again, that's why my platform is nonpartisan, because I'm running my platform is about unity and togetherness. And so you can always expect me to have your best interests at heart and protect your fundamental rights when you need it.
Thank you. John?
So I think the United States writ large is finally recognizing and trying to reconcile a system that hasn't worked very well for a long time and has been particularly punitive to folks who are of color or poor. And some of our local data that's provided through our Criminal Justice Coordinating Committee, which is really charged with executing a plan passed by both the city and the county to reform the local justice system, particularly around incarceration, suggests the same is true here. We have more people of color and we have more poor folks in jail than white folks. None of it is that simple. But the fact is that that in this country there is a longstanding tradition of out of time.
Sean is up next.
I don't have the data to talk too much about this, but I believe in equal rights for all citizens. So, if there's an injustice going on, I would want to address it directly.
Okay, thank you. Greg?
Well, I think we have some discrepancies in our judicial system here in Missoula, because if you're a transient shooting up in the back alley and the cops catch you, they'll probably just give you a slap on the wrist and let you go pretty quick. Maybe you do a night in jail, but if you're a regular citizen paying bills, they probably prosecute you because they know you can get some money out of you. And when it comes to the new Jedi program, I think we're just setting ourselves up for some future lawsuits here.
Thank you. Jacob.
I agree with Greg on this. So often, as a man of color, you have people that are white telling you what is best for you, or how you should be protected, or what. I don't need anyone to speak for me. And now I'm probably speaking for a lot of other people of color. I live this life. This is my life. And I don't need you to get out there and say, well, we're going to come up with all these initiatives to protect you because you need protection. I've never needed protection from our city government, and I'm not going to need it tomorrow. So again, let's think about why they're coming up with these initiatives. Perhaps it's election season, so we're trying to get some people reelected and to come out with these things. Again, sort of tokenize the issue as opposed to figuring out the root causes of these issues. And I think that's just great injustice to the BIPOC community.
Thank you for those comments. We are running out of time. Rather than take any more questions, we thought we'd offer this opportunity for you to offer a short closing statement, 30 seconds or so. John, would you like to start?
Sure. I'm sorry, did you say Sean or John?
I said John.
Okay, thank you. Sorry. So I really appreciate the opportunity. I appreciate the chance to answer your questions and to hear from the other candidates. What I have is record. So good, bad, or indifferent. You know how I work in office. You know what I've accomplished, and you know that I work hard toward solving problems for the community in a collaborative and cooperative way. You have seen specific solutions from me, you've heard specific answers from me, and you'll continue to hear those from me if you allow me the privilege of serving this community I love for another 4 years as your mayor.
Thank you. Sean, would you like to go next?
Sure. As John said earlier, this is your voice. If you're not happy with the current, then vote. My opinion is I don't care who you want to support. Your voice is now. Get out and vote. The last election was, I think, 22% of the city voted. I don't think that if you have a majority of 22%, you have 11.5% of the people in the city of Missoula who are making all the decisions. So get out, get your vote heard, and make your choices.
Thank you, Sean. Greg, would you like to offer a closing statement?
Okay, yeah, thanks. I just want to repeat that again. I think we're facing a real existential crisis here in Missoula when it comes to our lack of housing and how this is causing long-time residents to be forced from their apartments, forced from their homes. We're not building enough places for them. I talk to people making less than $20,000 a year. I talk to people making over $50,000 a year. I talk to nurses, plumbers. They can't find places to live right now. They can't afford a house, and the situation is only going to get worse. And for those folks that own a home right now, well, your taxes are going to go up. Wait until the new valuation comes out in January. It's going to give you a real headache. It's going to be a shocker. And my thing to you guys is, if you don't want us building in your backyard, we need to say, where can we build new housing units? Because if we keep pricing these people out of the market, who's going to serve your coffee? Who's going to wash your car? Who's going to do your laundry in your hotel room? Who's going to take care of you when you're old? This is a real crisis we have here, and we have a real great opportunity now to solve it. Thanks.
Thank you. And Jacob, would you like to close for us?
Yes. So often there's a saying in the Marine Corps, it's called the fog of war. So after you've been in combat for X amount of hours or days, you retreat and you allow the other troops to take over and move and advance the mission. I think the mayor being here, by the way, I want to thank the mayor for his service to our community. I thank you truly. But 16 years in office is far too long. It's a small community. Times have changed. People are changing. And our needs of our community are changing. It's time that you pass on the baton to another clear thinker. And so the mayor often said, well, I get a lot of credit than I deserve, and that he has a great staff and advisors. Well, as your next mayor, I will have the same opportunities to work with the amazing city staff as mayor. I've learned from my years that leadership of the Marine Corps, that it's not about me. It's about having a high performance team to complete the mission. So again, Missoula, please refrain from voting on the basis of rhetoric and symbolism. It doesn't matter how smart you are, unless you stop and think, you're likely to make the wrong decision. So I urge you to stop and to think. So it's time for a new leadership. I think I'm an agent of change. My mission here is to demolish the established walls of partisan impasse and machine politics. As the current administration, the mayor's administration, has lost sight of the best interest of our community. We've left behind our working class Missoulians. We've left behind our retirees. We've left behind our young professionals, single families. It's time that we cater to their needs. So what you see in the mayor's administration is what has been done, and we're here. So my leadership is something that hasn't been done, and is a fresh start for us to move our city into a new direction. So I urge you to get out to vote. The mayor won in 2017 by 12,700 votes. Now we can beat that. Register and vote. Register and vote. Let your voices be heard. Thank you.
I appreciate your participation and the participation of every candidate and everyone else who came to this forum today. Thank you very much for your time.
All right, one more thing. Thank you, Tyler, for your work today. You had a tough job. On your last comment, primary ballots will be mailed out to registered Missoula voters on August 25th, I believe. To our candidates, thank you so much. And Greg, say what you will about Zoom, but without it, we wouldn't have met your little campaign manager there. Thank you to Blackfoot Communication, the University of Montana, and for Security Bank for your executive sponsorship. And most importantly, thank you to our audience for spending this beautiful, sunny, cool summer day with us. And please join us on Tuesday, September 7th, I believe, for our next forum, which may or may not be in person, for a panel of local educators who will discuss the evolving impacts of COVID on K-12 classes as we begin the new school year. Our website and Facebook will have more information about it later this week. Thanks to all, and goodbye.